Look at your phlox right now. Those tall stems, those big domes of pink and lavender and white, leaning over the path in the August heat. That plant is standing at a crossroads this week, and almost nobody sees it coming. There is one thing your phlox needs in August, and if you miss it, you can slowly lose the exact plant you fell in love with. Not to a bug, not to a drought, to a quiet swap most gardeners never even notice. I learned this the hard way back in the summer of 2009 when I stood over a phlox I adored and realized it wasn't the same plant anymore. The Royal Horticultural Society has quietly recommended this timing for years, and by the end, I'll show you the exact August window and the single cut that changes everything. And yes, this works on an old, established clump you've grown for a decade, not just something fresh from the nursery. So let me start with the thing that scared me the most, because I think it's happening in more gardens than anyone admits. Have you ever noticed a phlox that used to be a soft salmon pink or a clean white with a pink eye slowly turn into a harsh, muddy magenta over a few seasons? Most people shrug and say the plant changed color. I believe that too for years. I thought it was the soil, or the sun, or just some strange thing phlox do as they age. But here is the truth that turned my whole understanding of this plant upside down. Your phlox did not change color. Your phlox was replaced. The named variety you bought, the one with the beautiful color, quietly died out in the middle of the clump, and a crowd of seedlings took its place. And those seedlings almost always come up the same aggressive magenta, because that is the color the wild parent wants to return to. Garden phlox, the tall, late summer kind, is Phlox paniculata, and it is native to the woodland edges and river bottoms of the eastern United States. Left to itself, it drops seed every autumn. Those seeds sprout the next spring right at the base of the mother plant. They grow faster and tougher than the fancy variety you paid for, and within 2 or 3 seasons they crowd out the original roots. The named plant weakens, the seedlings take over, and one day you look out and your whole stand has gone that same screaming pinkish purple. It feels like betrayal, but it is really just nature reverting to the wild. Now here is why this matters in August specifically, and why this is the month everything is decided. Those flower heads you are looking at right now are turning into seed as we speak. The petals fade, the little green pods swell, and by late summer they are ready to scatter. If you do nothing, that seed hits the ground, and the countdown to reversion begins. Therefore, the single most powerful thing you can do for your phlox this month is stop that seed before it ever forms. It sounds almost too simple. It sounds like tidying, but it is the difference between keeping the plant you love and slowly losing it to its own wild children. I wish I had known that in 2009. I had a phlox called Bright Eyes, a gentle pink with a crimson center, given to me by a neighbor who had grown it for years. I let it flower, I let it fade, and I thought I was being kind by leaving the seed heads for the birds. 3 summers later, there was no Bright Eyes left. Just a thick clump of ordinary magenta I never planted. That was the season I finally understood that doing nothing is not the same as doing no harm. But stopping the seed is only the first half of the story, and if you stop there, you miss the real gift August is offering you. Because that same cut does something else entirely, something that can double your blooms right when the rest of the garden is starting to fade. Let me explain what happens inside the plant when you remove a spent flower head at the right moment. A phlox stem is not a single flower. It is a main cluster at the top, and just below it, hidden in the leaf joints, sit smaller side shoots waiting for their turn. When the top cluster is busy making seed, the plant pours all its energy into those seeds and tells the side shoots to wait until next year. It is a survival instinct. Seed is the plant's future, so seed wins. But the moment you take that top cluster off before the seed sets, you flip a switch. The plant suddenly redirects that energy into the side shoots. Within 2 to 3 weeks, those little buds swell and open into a whole second flush of flowers. I have watched this happen in my own beds every single year, and it still feels like a small miracle. I cut the faded heads in the first half of August, and by early September I have a fresh round of bloom on plants that should have been finished. While my neighbor's phlox stands there brown and tired, mine are throwing color into late September and sometimes right into October. Same variety, same soil. The only difference is one cut made at the right time, on the right part of the stem, The Royal Horticultural Society has recommended deadheading phlox to prolong flowering and prevent self-seeding for a very long time. And once you understand the mechanism, you can't unsee it. This is not fussy tidying. This is you telling the plant, not yet, don't quit, give me more, and it listens. So here is exactly how I do it, so you can walk outside and do it today. I follow the faded flower cluster down the stem until I find the first strong pair of side shoots, the little green buds tucked into the leaf joints. Then I make my cut just above them, with clean secateurs. I do not chop the whole stem to the ground. I do not leave the deadhead sitting there to make seed. I remove only the spent cluster, right down to those waiting buds, and I let the side shoots take over. It takes me maybe 10 minutes to go through a decent clump. 10 minutes to protect the plant and buy myself 6 more weeks of flowers. But there is a catch, and this is where a lot of well-meaning gardeners still go wrong even when they deadhead. It is not only whether you cut, it is when you cut and how you handle everything else happening to the plant in the heat of August. Because there is a second threat closing in this month, and deadheading alone will not save you from it. Let me ask you something. Have you seen a dusty white film creeping over your phlox leaves this time of year? A grayish coating, starting low on the plant, climbing up the stems, turning the leaves yellow and crisp from the bottom. That is powdery mildew, and August is its favorite month. Warm days, cool nights, heavy dew, crowded stems. It is the perfect storm, and phlox is one of its favorite targets. I have seen gorgeous plants in full bloom on top while the entire lower half of the plant looked like it had been dipped in flour. Here is the mistake almost everyone makes when they see it. They panic and reach for the hose, and they water the leaves in the evening to cool the plant down. That is exactly the wrong move. Wet leaves overnight are what powdery mildew dreams about. The spores need that damp, still, humid air to spread. So when you spray the foliage at dusk, you are not helping the plant. You are feeding the fungus. I did this for years, standing out there in the cool of the evening with the hose, feeling like a good gardener and quietly making the problem worse every single night. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple once you know it. Water the soil, never the leaves, and do it in the morning, not the evening. Phlox is thirsty in August, there is no doubt about that. It wants a deep, steady drink, about 1 inch of water a week, which is roughly 2.5 centimeters, delivered slowly at the base so it soaks down to the roots. But every drop that lands on the foliage in the heat of summer is an invitation to disease. So I aim the water low, right at the crown and the soil around it, early in the day, so any splash dries within the hour. Deep roots, dry leaves. That is the whole secret to watering phlox in high summer, and it undoes years of accidental harm. There is one more thing that decides whether mildew wins or loses, and it is air. Phlox that is packed too tight, stem against stem, with no breeze moving through the middle of the clump, is mildew waiting to happen. Now, the ideal time to thin those stems is back in late spring when you pull out about a third of the weakest shoots to open the plant up. If you did that, wonderful. But if you are looking at a crowded, mildewed clump right now in August, don't despair, because there is still something you can do this month, and it leads me straight to the gardeners I most want to reach. I want to talk directly now to those of you looking at an old phlox, not a tidy young plant, but a big established clump you have had for years. Maybe it came with the house, maybe your mother grew it, maybe it is looking rough this August. Mildewed at the base, floppy, half of it that suspicious magenta already, and a part of you is wondering if it is too far gone to bother. This next part is for you, because I have brought plants exactly like that back from the edge, and August is a better month to start than you think. The first thing I do with a struggling old clump is cut out the sickness, not the whole plant. If the lower leaves are coated in mildew and turning brown, I remove those worst stems entirely, right down near the ground, and I get them out of the garden. I do not put them on the compost because those spores will happily overwinter and come back next year. Bag them or burn them. Taking out even a quarter of the most infected stems instantly opens up the center of the plant, lets the air flow through, and stops the mildew from climbing into the healthy growth above. The plant looks a little thinner for a week, but it breathes again, and the flowers still standing on top keep going. The second thing I do is look hard at the color, because this is where I find out whether reversion has already started. If your clump is a mix of the original color and that harsh magenta, the magenta seedlings are already in there, competing. You can actually rescue the true variety even now. I trace the magenta stems down to the base and I dig those specific rooted pieces out carefully with a hand fork, leaving the original color untouched. It is like weeding out imposters that snuck into the family. Do this over a couple of seasons and you can hold on to your real plant instead of watching it disappear. I have saved varieties this way that I was certain were already lost. And that is really what this whole video has been about. Learning to read what the plant is telling you instead of guessing, because guessing at a rescue is usually what finishes an old clump off. I put everything I know about that kind of reading into 3 books I wrote myself. For gardeners like you with plants that have been in the family for decades, so you can name the real cause behind a droop, a yellow leaf, or a bloom that never comes, and know when the honest answer is to leave the plant alone. They cover the month-by-month decisions on hydrangeas, roses, peonies, clematis, and coneflowers, what to cut, what to feed, what to leave standing, and how to keep records the way the old extension growers did. So next spring is decided on purpose and not by accident. If your hands already know this work and you simply want the exact timing, scan the QR code right there on your screen, link in the description, pinned comment, and the collection is yours. Because knowing when to cut and when to hold back is only part of it. The bigger question with an old phlox is whether the middle of the clump has any life left in it at all. And the third thing, the thing that truly revives a tired old clump, is knowing that the real reset comes just a little later, but you plan for it now. A phlox that has been sitting in the same spot for more than 4 or 5 years often gets woody and hollow in the middle, with all the life pushed out to the edges. That center has simply worn out. The cure is lifting and dividing the clump. And while early spring is the classic time, many experienced growers divide phlox in early autumn. In September, as soon as the flowering winds down, so the roots settle in while the soil is still warm. So what you do in August is mark it. Note which clumps are hollow in the middle, keep them watered and healthy through the end of their bloom, and get ready to lift and split them in a few weeks. You dig up the whole thing, you throw away the dead woody center, and you replant the strong young pieces from the outer ring. That single act can take a plant that was fading fast and give it another 10 good years. I know that can feel like a big job when you are attached to a plant. I felt the same the first time I put a fork under a phlox my grandmother had grown. My hands were actually shaking. But that plant, split into 4, is now 4 healthy clumps in my garden, all still the true color, all still blooming, decades after she first planted it. Doing nothing would have let it rot from the inside. The bravery of the cut is what kept her plant alive. Now, there is one more August mistake I have to warn you about before we get to the real secret, because this one undoes all your good work without you ever realizing it. And it has to do with feeding. Here is the trap. Your phlox is blooming, it is working hard, the leaves might look a little pale, and your instinct says feed it. Give it a boost. Reach for the same nitrogen-rich lawn-type feed you have in the shed and throw a handful around the base. I understand the impulse completely. It feels generous. It feels like love. But in August, that generosity can hurt the plant badly, and here is why. A high nitrogen feed pushes out a rush of soft, sappy new leaves. In spring, that is fine. In late summer, it is a disaster. For 2 reasons. First, that soft new growth is exactly what powdery mildew attacks. You are laying out a feast for the very disease you are trying to fight. Second, and more serious, that tender growth has no time to harden before the cold comes. You are telling a plant that should be slowing down and getting ready for winter to suddenly sprint. When the first frosts hit, all that soft growth blackens and dies, and the plant goes into winter weakened and stressed instead of strong and rested. So the rule I follow is simple. The real feeding of phlox happens in spring, when the growth is just starting, with a balanced general fertilizer and a good mulch of compost or well-rotted manure worked in around the base. That is when they are hungry and building for the year. By August, the feeding is done. If your plant looks tired now, the answer is water at the roots and good airflow, not a shot of nitrogen. Let the plant put its energy where it belongs this month, into finishing its flowers and quietly storing strength in the roots for next year. Feed in spring, hold back in late summer. That restraint is one of the kindest things you can do. Which brings me, finally, to the one thing I promised you at the very start. The single step most gardeners get completely wrong. The one that separates a phlox that thrives for 20 years from one that quietly fades and reverts. Everything so far has been leading here. Let me take you back for a moment to a man named Karl Forster. He was a German nurseryman, born in 1874, and he spent his long life obsessed with perennials, phlox above all. He bred dozens of the garden phlox varieties we still grow today, and he understood something about this plant that most modern gardeners have completely forgotten. He knew that phlox is not a plant you set and forget. He treated it as a plant in conversation with the gardener, one that gives back exactly in proportion to the attention you pay it at the right moments. The careful nursery growers who came after him kept this knowledge alive in their propagation beds, passing it hand to hand, even as it dropped out of the mass market plant tags and the quick online guides. And here it is. The secret is not just to deadhead. It is to deadhead in two precise waves, and to do the first wave now, in the first 2 weeks of August, cutting each spent cluster back to that first pair of side shoots, exactly as I showed you. That first wave stops the seed before it can form and triggers the second flush. But the part almost everyone misses is the second wave. As those side shoots bloom and fade through late August and into September, you go back and deadhead them too the very same way. Most people cut once, feel done, and walk away. The growers who really knew phlox never stopped at one cut. They kept removing every faded head right through the season, because every single seed head you allow to ripen is another handful of magenta imposters dropped at the foot of your beloved plant. 2 waves, not one. That is the whole secret. And there is a final touch that Forster's tradition understood, the piece that ties it all together. When you make that August cut, you are not only saving the color and buying a second bloom, you are deciding where the plant sends its strength for the rest of the year. A phlox that is not wasting energy on seed, that is not fighting mildew on wet leaves, that is not being forced into soft growth by late feeding, pours everything into its crown and its roots. That is the plant that comes back thicker, taller, and more richly colored next July. The August cut is really an investment in next summer's plant. You are standing here in the heat, 10 minutes with a pair of secateurs, quietly building the phlox you will marvel at a full year from now. That is why the timing is everything. Do it too late, after the seed is already dropped and the imposters are already in the ground. Do it too aggressively, cutting the whole plant to the base, and you lose the side shoots and the second flush along with it. The window is narrow and it is open right now. The first 2 weeks of August, the cut to the first side shoots, and then the discipline to come back and do it again in a few weeks. Simple, free. Almost nobody does it. And it is the difference between a phlox that slowly betrays you and a phlox that stays true and generous for decades. I think about that neighbor who gave me bright eyes, and how I lost it because I thought leaving the seed heads was kindness. I think about how one small piece of knowledge, held onto by careful growers and half forgotten by everyone else, would have saved it. And I think about how many gardens right now have a beautiful named phlox standing at that exact crossroads, its owner about to do nothing, about to be kind in exactly the wrong way. You are not going to be one of them. You know now what that magenta really means, and you know the single cut that stops it. So go out this week, while the window is still open, and give your phlox the thing it has been quietly asking for. You do not need to buy anything. You do not need to dig anything up today. You just need 10 minutes, a clean pair of secateurs, and the confidence to make that first cut down to the side shoots, knowing you are protecting the exact plant you love from being replaced by its own wild children. Here is what I hope you feel right now. Not fear that you have been doing it wrong, but relief that you finally know, and that it is not too late. That phlox in your garden, the one you have watered and worried over and watched from the kitchen window, can stay true to itself and keep giving you color long after everything else has faded. You are the kind of gardener who refuses to lose a plant you have poured years into, and now you have the one piece of timing that makes that possible. So tell me, which phlox are you going to save first? Is it a pink one, a white one with a colored eye, a deep purple you have babied for years? And has yours already started drifting toward that magenta, or have you caught it just in time? Leave me a comment right now and tell me the color and how long you have grown it. And while you are there, tell me where in the world you are gardening from, because I love picturing all of these beds in all of these different places. Please actually write it down, because I read them and I answer, and your story might be the thing that saves someone else's plant. And if you refuse to let your favorite plants die from lazy advice off a plant tag, Come stand with the rest of us who feel the same way. This is a little community of stubborn, devoted gardeners who would rather learn the real timing than lose the plant, and I would love for you to be part of it. Because next I want to show you the exact September window for lifting and dividing that tired old phlox clump without losing a single bloom next year, and the one root you should never cut when you do it. That one surprised even me. Keep your secateurs sharp, keep watering low, and I will see you in the next one. Before you go, if this video helped, there's a deeper version waiting for our members. You can ask me your own question and a real person answers, and you'll be among thousands of folks just like you. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen. It takes less than a minute, and you can cancel anytime, no risk. Now, your daylilies need a little care this month too, and most folks miss it. I'll show you the simple tricks that keep them blooming strong. That video's starting right here.